2 videos in one night? What the fuck not? So, as you saw in my previous video, if you watched it, you saw this one. The Spindrift Abyss Black Lager. So that's what I'm going to be trying tonight, in the titular skull mug, of course. And here goes nothing. Let's see if my beer pouring skills improved at all. Nope. Oh, no, not at all. Oh god, I fucked that up horribly. Look at the foam on that. You can see the head, like from here, right? Jesus. It does smell pretty dark though. I think Abyss is definitely the right term to use for the title of this beer, specifically. I'll have a bit from the can first though, why not? Damn. It's a lager, but it's pretty close to a stout. Honestly, there's a lot of coffee and chocolate in there. Yeah, I'm definitely getting more coffee than chocolate, but there is definitely a hint of chocolate, more so in the aftertaste instead of like the initial flush that you get right when you put it in your mouth. That's really fucking good though. Damn. Spindrift knocks it out of the park again. Another really good one. It is quite good. And it's only 4.8%, which ain't bad. But I guess what the best thing to talk about right now would be the Fog Lake tour, because I just got back a little under a week ago. We arrived back in Montreal on the 28th, I believe, which was this past Monday. And I took another day off and then I went back to work on Wednesday. So I've been having a bit of trouble readjusting, of course, after being gone for so long, and now back trying to get back into the groove of things. But honestly, compared to the last tour, which was back in June of 2019, this one was significantly better, so much better, just in every fucking way. The way everyone was behaving so professionally, and there was really no really bad shows. We there was a couple shows where we didn't play that great, but for the most part we performed really well. We had a couple really good shows, and there were some nights where we packed the entire venue, which was awesome. But aside from that, every drive that we did on this tour was super entertaining compared to the last time when we were driving from New England into the Midwest. And New England's fine, but when you get into the Midwest, it's just boring miles upon miles of farmland that stretch as far as the eye can see, just like in Saskatchewan and Alberta, and it's just so boring and mind-numbing to drive through. So thankfully this time around we didn't get that. We got just the most picturesque, beautiful scenery that I've ever seen in my life, honestly. I'm just going to pull up really quickly the tour date poster, which I designed, by the way, so that I can accurately recount everything that happened on this tour. As I sip my Spindrift Black Lager Abyss and pour the rest of the can in there. Alright, so let's see. Having trouble finding the poster even though I made it. That's great. West Coast 2020 tour dates. No? Not going to show me? Come on. Okay, here we go. So, we flew out to Vancouver on the 14th, and it was kind of a really shit flight, in all honesty, because we got grounded at the airport because Transat, the airline that we flew with, fucked up people's baggage. So we ended up having to wait for them to get all of the baggage and put it onto the airplane, which put us back by like half an hour. And then in that time, a bunch of other planes jumped in front of us to take off first. And by the time we actually got back into the lineup to where we were ready to take off, our wings had to get, like, the plane had to go through the defrosting procedure, or the de-icing procedure for the wings. So that ended up putting us back by another hour. So we actually ended up taking off an hour and a half later than we were supposed to, leaving us just sitting on the plane, just waiting and waiting and waiting, and it sucked. And then, thankfully, when we were up in the air, like, everything was fine. Although there was one really sketchy moment where we were sitting in the very last row in the entire plane, and all of a sudden, like, two of the stewardesses and a couple of passengers, like 3 passengers, all kind of crowded up around the back of the plane. And then we heard an announcement like, if there are any doctors, nurses, or other medical professionals on this flight, would you please make yourself known to the flight crew? Which definitely didn't put us in the best mindset. It was a little bit unnerving, to say the least. But after like 20 minutes, they all like left and went back to their seats, so I assume everything was fine. But just not the greatest start. So we landed in Vancouver, and then we were just sitting there waiting for our baggage, and it took forever for that to come out. Then we went and got a cab, and we went to the guy's place that we were staying. I forget the dude's name now, but it was at this place called, I forget, Instant Records. Yeah, that wasn't really the name of the location, but the guy who was living there, it was this DIY space, and Instant Records is the name of the label him and a couple of other friends were trying to start. So I'm just referring to the DIY space itself as Instant Records, which I think is an appropriate name. And honestly, it was a great place to stay. Like, we had a really good first night in Vancouver. The next day, we were supposed to meet Dylan, our driver, who lives in Seattle, at the venue that we were playing, which was the Biltmore Cabaret in Vancouver. But the thing is, Vancouver had just experienced a snowstorm. And by a snowstorm, I mean like 10 centimeters of snow. But because it rarely ever snows in Vancouver, the entire city shut down. So we called like 8 different cab companies trying to get someone who could bring us from this guy's place, which was in Burnaby, to the venue, which was in like Vancouver proper. And there was no one who could do it. Like, we were just basically stuck at this guy's place, like on the border between Burnaby and like actual Vancouver. So that kind of sucked. Eventually we waited, and we finally got Dylan, our driver, to come meet us at this guy's place, and we packed up and we left. We get to the venue, and we load in, and everything's fine. And then we're going to go get some food, right? So we get back into the van, and as we're trying to drive away to get to the hotel where we're staying for that night, for the second night, we ended up getting stuck in the parking lot outside the venue. And we were stuck for a good 20 minutes to half an hour, just trying to push Dylan's van out of the place, and it just like wouldn't go. It took us forever to fucking do it, and it was funny. It was a great first start to the tour, but honestly, after that, everything was pretty much smooth sailing. We played Vancouver. Unfortunately, there were a lot of friends of ours, both mine and Aaron's, who are from Newfoundland, that were going to come out to that show, but they couldn't because the city was shut down and they had no way to actually physically get from their apartments or their houses to the venue. So that sucked. And there were only about 20 people there, but at the end of the day, we played fine and the show was great. And after that, we went back to the hotel. We had a good night. Warren showed up at the venue, and that's where we met him. Warren, of course, being the guy from Foxes and Fiction and the founder of Orchid Tapes, the label that Aaron from Fog Lake is on. And he performed really well. I wasn't expecting to like his music as much as I did, but he's fucking awesome. So if you are into like ambient stuff or like any kind of drone, like interesting electronic music, like Voxes in Fiction is honestly fucking sick. It's not something that I ever thought I'd be into personally, but I actually recommend it. Um, so we went back to the hotel, and then the next morning we woke up and we got into our van, and we were really anxious about Victoria because to get to Victoria, which is on Vancouver Island, you have to take a ferry. And the day before that, the ferry had been canceled because of high winds, but thankfully we woke up and the weather was immaculate. It was really nice. It was actually what I expected Vancouver to be like based on what everyone had told me, not like a fucking snowstorm. So we drove to the ferry, we got on, we had a really nice picturesque ferry ride where, you know, we got to see all these cool, beautiful little islands on that short ferry ride out to Victoria. We got on Vancouver Island proper, and then we drove to the next venue, which is the Lucky Bar. And that was a great show too. Honestly, that was probably one of the best ones of tour. The opener, Katie Lane, I think her name is. She's normally a solo musician, but she had a full band backing her this time, and she actually offered us a place to stay. So after the show was done, we went to stay at her place. We had a great sleep. I think that was honestly probably one of the best nights that we had, aside from the fact that because it was still a little bit icy in Victoria, as we got to Katie's place and we were looking for her house, we went around to the wrong side of the building. And as we realized this was the wrong house and we went around to the other side to go to the other one, Aaron slipped and basically sprained his ankle. Day 2 of tour, and Aaron's already fucked his leg and he can barely walk. So we get back inside and we're just like chilling out and hoping that he's okay. Thankfully, wake up next morning and like, you know, he was a bit upset at his leg, but it wasn't like the worst thing ever. You know, like he powered through, and you know, I gotta give credit where credit is due. He handled it quite well, honestly. So then we had to take the ferry back to the mainland, of course, back to Vancouver, and then we drove down across the border. We passed the border in like literally like 2 minutes. It was the easiest border crossing we've ever had, thankfully, because Dylan is an American, so it was really easy for him to get back into the country. And also we had our visas. It was like the 3rd time that we've been to the U.S. under the name Fog Lake. So it was super easy to cross the border, and one of the border agents was actually from Newfoundland herself, or had family from Newfoundland or something, and when she found out that me and Aaron were from Newfoundland, she basically gave us the go-ahead to be fine, and she asked us if we missed George Street, to which we obviously replied yes. So after Victoria, we went down to Seattle, of course, like I was saying, and we played at a venue called the Black Lodge, which I was super stoked by because, of course, anything that's named after Twin Peaks I'm going to be a huge fan of. But unfortunately, it wasn't exactly the best situation. The Black Lodge is a DIY space. It's also a dry venue, so they don't serve beer there, which really sucked. And the promoter was not the most friendly person. Thankfully, the opener, they were a really cool band, and Dylan actually has done sound at the Black Lodge before, so there wasn't actually a sound guy present, and he just ended up kind of being forced into doing it. But because he had done it before at the venue, we actually had really good sound. But unfortunately, because this was the first night after Aaron had sprained his ankle, he was actually sitting down, and he sat down for a good like 5 or 6 shows after that happened. But at the Black Lodge, thankfully, a ton of people showed out. This was definitely one of the best turnouts that we had on the tour because the entire room was just packed with people. And ultimately, it was a really great night. There was this one funny instance, though, where aside from the venue itself, like the venue's here, and then there was this hallway going underneath the sound booth, because the sound booth was in this tiny like alcove upstairs, and I was like, oh, you have to go through this hallway probably to get up to the sound booth. And I went back and was looking for a staircase to get up there, but there were 2 doors at the end of the hallway, so I was like, it must be through one of these doors. So I open up a door and go in, and it's just this guy's apartment just like sitting there playing fucking Xbox, and I'm like, what? And he was just like, not this way. Like, he was fucking pissed. And it was fucking hilarious. But, you know, it's clearly not the first time this has happened to him, and actually Warren from Fox and Fiction had done the exact same thing earlier that night. So, like, you know, if this continues to happen, like maybe you should just take a hint and put a fucking lock on your door instead of getting pissed at every person who walks through mistakenly thinking that this is like a way to get to a bathroom or something. Like, you know, you have to kind of take a bit of the onus there yourself, right? But also the cool thing about Seattle was that Dylan is from Seattle, so we actually ended up staying at his place with him and his partner Malia, who's really cool, a really sweet girl. She was awesome, and his other roommates, who I unfortunately didn't really get a chance to talk to just because I was super tired. And then the next day, we got up and we went out to this restaurant to have brunch, which was really nice. I wish I could remember the name of it. It's somewhere like on my Instagram or something, but it was really great. It had awesome food, so I was super impressed. Like the food situation in Seattle and Portland was like fantastic. Like the West Coast as a vegan is a mecca. After the Black Lodge in Seattle, we went to Portland and we played at a place called Mississippi Studios, which is apparently a legendary venue. There were a lot of other like really big bands that have played there. Like for example, and you will know us, right? The Trail of Dead was playing there actually like a week after we were, and it was a really nice like. It's kind of hard to describe, but it kind of had this like theater vibe to it, like based on the design of the interior and just the lighting and everything, the carpets on the floor. It was really really cool, and we ended up having some really great food there as well at a place that was actually attached to Mississippi Studios, where we got these free veggie burgers and stuff, and that was really awesome. Then we went across the road to this martini like surfing themed restaurant that also had a lot of vegan food, and that was fucking cool. The coolest thing that happened that night was I met one of David's, the bass player of Fog Lake, one of his friends from Portland, and he said that he was actually really good friends with Jeff Whitehead's ex-wife, who runs a metal themed record shop in Portland. And he was trying to like get a hold of her so that we could go there after the show and just like check it out. And like I wanted to buy something, I really wanted to meet her and just, you know, be like, hey, I think this is really cool that you run this like badass record shop. But unfortunately it kind of fell through because she didn't answer his phone. I think she was probably asleep or busy working or something like that, but you know, there's always next time. After Portland we had a day off, and the next drive that we did was down to Oakland. So we took the day off to drive down there, and then when we got to Portland, to Oakland, I can't remember where we stayed that night. I think that might have been one of the hotel nights, possibly. Yeah, I honestly can't remember. But we played at this place called the Starline Social Club, with a sub-venue in it called like the Crystal Cavern, I think it was called. And that was a really big venue where a lot of bands have played. Like, actually, okay, I couldn't tell if it was the bands themselves that had played there, or if this was just the venue trying to add decor to make it look like the bands had played there, when in reality they just printed posters like off the internet or something. Because they have posters from like Kids in the Hall, which is like a Canadian. It's a classic sketch comedy TV show. They had like Smashing Pumpkins there, and like all these really big bands that I feel wouldn't play a venue that small, even unless it was like way back in the day, you know. But I have no idea how long the Starline Social Club has been around, because this was in Oakland, California. But the cool thing about Oakland is that this was in Northern California, so this was getting right into the most beautiful part of the entire tour, where we were driving through these beautiful, gigantic mountains that are coated in snow, but it was never too cold. Like as soon as we got to the like past the Canadian border, it was never freezing. Like we were getting into weather for like jeans, t-shirt, and a hoodie, and it was so comfortable. And I was just mesmerized by how gorgeous the scenery was going down there. So yeah, in Oakland we played the Starline Social Club, and unfortunately that was the first kind of meh show that we played. Mostly because usually on a tour, I noticed this the last time we did it too, when you have a day off, the first show back after your day off kind of blows, because you lose a bit of that momentum, and you kind of, even though it's only one day, you kind of lose a bit of steam and you just kind of forget certain things, and we admittedly kind of fucked up a little bit. But thankfully, there weren't a lot of people there to witness that. And strangely enough, some woman like brought a baby into the bar, and that was really awkward. I never want to experience that again. That was very strange. I don't know why anyone would bring a baby to a bar. Just don't bring your infants to a place that serves alcohol. This is a bad idea. So the next day, we were driving to Felton, and on the drive between Oakland and Felton is the California Redwood Forest, which I really, really wanted to go to, and David really, really wanted to go to. And when we got there, I swear to God, it was the most beautiful thing I've ever seen in my life. Like, I can't describe it accurately in words. It was almost a spiritual experience to see this place. Like, some of the biggest, oldest trees in the world, like really old growth trees, a forest floor that's just coated in like ferns and fallen leaves and logs that have been there for forever. We saw like either a lizard or a salamander, which I've never seen in the wild before in my life, because obviously in Newfoundland you don't fucking see that shit. And you know, we got completely blazed in that forest, and honestly, I don't have these moments very often in my life, but it was kind of a religious experience, and I have some pictures of it on my Instagram and on Facebook, and I'm really glad I have them, because honestly it was one of the most amazing things that I've ever seen in my life, and I will go back there any day. And then we got to Felton itself, which Felton and all the other towns in that region, they have this old western vibe. Like, they look like the set of a film. Like, all the stores have that kind of like old west saloon text used as their logos, and everything is super small and super kitschy, and it was like the most adorable place I've ever been to. It's a total tourist trap, I know, but it was just amazing. And the Felton Music Hall was awesome. I ended up meeting our promoter rep who at that show. His name is Justin Soria, I think. And he's the guy who runs the Bay Area Death Fest of all things. Yet he was, you know, booking Fog Lake, so or well, not booking, but promoting us. So that was really strange. But he was the nicest guy. We got treated the best that we've ever been treated at a show in Felton, and that guy was a pleasure to deal with. We had like the most amazing service from the wait staff who brought us in-house vegan food. That was awesome. And that was also the first show where, after Aaron sprained his leg, where he was able to stand up again. And we also managed to get Warren, who had been using a projector this whole time that was given to him by Dylan, to put on the Blair Witch Project as our backdrop from that point on until the end of tour. We used that as our backdrop, but Felton was the first time we did that. There was also a moment where when Aaron was really desperately trying to tune his guitar, he got David to do some grime rapping just like on the spot in the show. And there was only like 20 people there at this one, but it was a really awesome moment, and it was just fucking hilarious to get him to see him like do that in front of a crowd of people. So yeah, after the Felton Music Hall, we went to Los Angeles, and that is unfortunately LA was kind of crappy in my opinion. I mean that just like in terms of like the venue being kind of strange and not really actually getting to see Los Angeles, which, you know, when you're on tour you don't get to like see like any of the cities you go to really. It's kind of like you get there, you might have a few hours to go sightseeing if you want, but usually you want to get food. And I mean, you have to load in, you have to sound check, you have to set up, you have to fucking deal with the buyouts, you have to go get food and all that kind of stuff. So like you never really get to do much sightseeing as much as you would want to do if you were an actual tourist going to these locations. So we drove by places like, you know, we saw the Hollywood sign off in the distance. We drove by the headquarters of Scientology, for God's sake. But the cool thing about Los Angeles, though, is like it's one of the only cities that I've been to where you actually see like billboards and advertisements for actual albums that are coming out. And, you know, it's mostly like pop and really like well-known artists, like, you know, artists who are definitely millionaires who have like these just billboards displaying like, hey, it's a new album from like, I don't know, fucking like Ariana Grande or like from Beyonce or someone like that. But it's cool to see ads for music. You know, in Montreal you don't get that unless it's for like a local station, like a radio station, right? It's cool to see it for an actual album. But the venue we played was called El Cid on the Strip, and of course it is, as the name suggests, on the Sunset Strip itself, which was cool. We got to the venue a bit early, and there was another show going on before ours, and it was mostly like these hard rock bands that were kind of like, it felt like they were trying to relive the glory days of the hair metal scene. So I stuck around and watched one band called Black Velvet, fronted by this lady named Melissa Kay. And honestly, they were pretty good. They, you know, it was fun to watch. I thought that they were really good musicians. Honestly, they had some really catchy songs, and she was a great singer, very very attractive as well. So yeah, I mean, if you want to check them out, there's going to be a little video in the eventual tour vlog that I do for the Fog Lake tour. But I would also say just, you know, check them out on social media and stuff. Now after the show in LA, I believe, yeah, okay, so we drove a bit and we ended up staying at one of Aaron's friends' places for the night. And she had the most adorable puppy dog ever that was named Scooby. And we all took pictures with him. It was fucking amazing. So that was awesome. And then we went to drive to San Diego. And my battery's about to die, so I'm going to stop it right here. But I will talk more about the Fog Lake tour in the next video. Until then, peace out.